I spoke of India and the world being at a moment of nothing short of a civilizational crisis. A signal of it being that we're choosing leaders who are teaching us to be hateful of identified vulnerable groups in every country. I also spoke about they foster fear, resentment, hate. They display very little faith in democratic institutions, and they're very close to big business. But most of all, that there is a profound absence of public compassion in their actions. And the crisis is not those leaders, the crisis is us who are choosing and applauding and encouraging these leaders. And therefore the problem is not up there or out there, but within us. And we need to recognize the nature of that crisis and how do we respond to it. I spoke about the attack of the present regime on India's Muslims is not simply an attack on one disadvantaged population. It is through the attack on India's Muslims, it is actually an attack on what we call the idea of India itself. The idea of India dating back centuries. As Maulana Azad said, this is the one civilization where caravans came from every corner of the world. But instead of moving on, they stayed on. And they made this country their own. And it is that idea that we embodied during our freedom struggle when we said this would be a country for all people and all of every faith and identity. It is this idea that we wrote into our constitution. It is this idea that is being contested by a very large political, very powerful political formation, which from the start, importantly, never took part in the freedom struggle. They were fighting this battle. So,
when you say the problem is us and this fight, there's a conversation that I'm reminded of. It says that the real fight is between the liberal Hindus and the conservative Hindus.
no, I think that is central, and I agree that I feel that what we are seeing around us is a continuing radicalization of the caste Hindu heart and mind, and we have to call it by that name. We use very interesting, different language. When in the Karwan-e Mohabbat, I just came back. In fact, yesterday I spent the day, a heartbreaking day in Aligarh, where 4 men had been brutally assaulted, and in the name of protecting the cow. Interestingly, we don't use the word, we use the word vigilante. Suppose it was the other way around. Suppose it was a group of Muslim men instead of the Bajrang Dal who beat up for Hindu people. What would we have called them? We would have called them terrorists. What is the difference? Where do we, we somehow, and interestingly, I just spoke to you about the railway constable who, they didn't call him a terrorist. They certainly, just imagine if he was a Muslim railway constable who walked through the train and killed 3 ostensibly Hindu men. What would have been happening in this country? And what would we have called him? We'd have definitely said he's a terrorist, probably with links with ISI and Al-Qaeda and so on. For this man, we said, no, he must be having a mental health problem. And that is what they finally concluded after the inquiry, that he had a mental health problem. But when I'm saying the problem is us, I'm saying that these authoritarian leaders are not coming at the back of machine guns and military uprisings. They're coming through the ballot box. We are choosing them in larger numbers around the world, and therefore we need to understand that what is it that is, why are we making these choices? And the India story in this, since you raised it, is particularly peculiar. In America, they say that if you are white American, there's a greater chance you'd be voting Trump. But if you're a white American with a university degree, the chances go down. And in a very good university degree, it goes further. In ours, it is the absolute opposite. If you're a caste Hindu, greater chance you'll be voting BJP. Caste Hindu with a university degree, higher chances. IIT, IIMs, even higher chances. Sort of studied abroad and got the best life chances, even higher chances. It's ordinary working class Indians who are still living the idea of India over and over again. When the 3 terrorists came in and shot 26 people, how did the people of Kashmir respond? I mean, through all of that, there was so much grief that they conveyed. They opened up their homes for the tourists who were terrified. They kept them. The whole, because the streets were, choked with people desperate to return, and it was lined with Kashmiri people who gave them food, who gave them water, and apologized. When the Kumbh Mela stampede happened, mosques opened up to give shelter to the people who had been affected. That is my India. And that is the India that ordinary Indians still live. It is people like of the social class that most of us who have gathered in this room belong to, who have let this country down and who continue to do it. I mean, it's extraordinary, the kind of prejudices that are being put out for us. Any kind of intelligent, rational kind of understanding, and you would know that it just doesn't make sense. But we continue to hold on to it. I mean, let me just give an example. I was in the IAS and I taught for 3 years in the Mussoorie Academy, and I used to be called quite regularly to meet officers and talk to them about these issues. Of course, after 2014, that completely stopped. But at some, I think almost by accident, somebody called me and to address a group of DGs of police, the most senior, and IGs and DGs. It was a very senior level official program. And I decided I would speak to them about some of the things that we are talking today. I spoke to them about lynching and hate violence and so on. For half an hour, they heard me out quietly, and then one person put up his hand, and this is, please remember, this is an official training which is properly recorded, and so on. He puts up his hand and he says, बहुत अच्छा हो रहा है कि मुसलमानों का lynching हो रहा है. So I said, I'm sorry, I think I didn't understand you, correctly. What did you say? And he repeated this. And I said, like, wow, you are the Director General of a state, looking after the state police, holding the constitution hopefully in your hand and heart. How can you say this? And he said, नहीं, मुसलमान पे lynching नहीं होता तो सर पे चढ़ जाता. And then it was like he opened up, the doors of a dam, and one by one they started speaking every standard prejudice. And pardon? Just a few years. It was post 2014. So, and it was interesting and heartbreaking because I kept trying to, I said, what are your problems with Muslims? So they came up with various things. Okay, they have 4 wives. Then I'd say, firstly, why is there such a tone of envy in your voice? But 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 if indeed majority of Muslims had 4 wives, then 3/4 Muslim men should be unmarried. How many unmarried Muslim men do you know? Then I said there was actually a census, I think 81, which asked this question and found that there was bigamy was a little higher among Hindus than Muslims. They said, "हम नहीं मानते." I said, "अरे आप कैसे नहीं मानते? मतलब है." Then they said they're breeding very large families and they'll become a majority. So I said there's enough data that studies show that Muslims and Hindus have identical reproductive behavior when you match class for class and education level for education. If poverty is much higher among Muslims, they are having, but it's not something that is linked to हम नहीं मानते तो all Muslims, all terrorists are Muslims. I'd say nahi, first who killed the father of the nation and 2 prime ministers were killed by terrorists, were they Muslim? And there's data, actually this is official data, of people killed in terrorist militant violence. People of Muslim identity were responsible for, except 2008, they were responsible about 12%, which is less than their share in the population. हम नहीं मानते. So this went on, and I was reminded of हिंदी में एक कहावत है ना कि आप सोए को तो जगा सकते हैं, जागे को कैसे जगाएं. हमारे जो सबसे पढ़े लिखे लोग हैं, जिनको who have every opportunity and so on, why do they carry the greatest amount of prejudices? And these prejudices, I mean, it's just unbelievable the kinds of things that are being said. COVID, within a week of COVID, we were convinced across the country that this is a great conspiracy of Muslims to infect the rest of us. Because in one building in South Delhi, with permission, a religious gathering was held. There were many other gatherings across the country, but we were convinced and we agreed to be convinced. And the idea that वो अपना थूक निकालते हैं और फिर सब्जियों में लगाते हैं ताकि, I mean, intelligent people, educated people, यार कम से कम have some sense. But it is the radicalization of the educated, upper caste, well-to-do Hindu heart and mind, which is our central problem. And we have to call it by that name and recognize their heart and mind. And as he said, it is not all Hindus. I still believe that the majority of Hindus do not approve of this kind of project of hate. I mean, you can look at the election sort of voting patterns, etc. But I still believe that the majority of Indians, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, don't approve of Christian, don't approve of this project of hate. And as I said, the ordinary working class Indian is still living the idea of India more than most of us do. And that is the crisis. That is the crisis where we, people of privilege in this country, centuries old privilege, privilege of every kind, what has happened to us? This is what that worries me, that troubles me, that keeps me awake.